Hey, what's good, y'all? It's your boy JD6 here with my man. Shout out to KC Sports Authority. Make sure y'all go check that podcast out, man.
You heard the man. Welcome into the KC Sports Authority podcast. Keegan Russell, JB here with you today to talk some KU hoops. But before we get going, just want to take a quick few seconds here to just reflect back on some of the events of this week. A week that should have been a fun celebration for Chiefs fans and Chiefs Kingdom. Started out great, and then, of course, ended very poorly with a few decisions from a few people deciding to hurt everyone. Don't want to dive in too much into it other than, say what a tragic event that was. An awful thing to happen. Do not condone any violence whatsoever. Thoughts and prayers with all of those that were impacted, not just the family members of those who were shot, then the one death, but anyone that just, is the aftermath of dealing with all that's still having a hard time. Get help if you need help. There's still plenty of free resources out there that you can talk to for anyone that's trying to deal with that. Shout out to those, Kansas City heroes that were there, not just the men and women in uniform, but some of the fans around that decided to step in and take care of those, and to a lot of the Chiefs players and coaches who helped calm people down. So just an awful thing to happen. So glad that, majority of everyone was safe, of course. But yeah, thoughts and prayers with those family members. JB and I thought it would be good here for a few seconds after getting that off. Let's just give them a few seconds here of a moment of silence, just to have our thoughts extended to them. So let's do that for a few seconds. All right. So again, thoughts and prayers with the family. I'm glad to hear that most of the kids are recovering just fine, physically at least. They still have a long road mentally to kind of deal with all that. But shout out to everyone that has been part of the process of healing. Kansas City stronger. Kansas City strong. If you haven't seen a lot of that going around, there's a really cool T-shirt going out right now to raise money and awareness for all that. A lot of money's been donated already to take care of the medical expenses. So a lot of cool things. Kansas City recover strong, just like we anticipated. Just wish it wasn't off of an unfortunate event like this, but wanted to start off with that. But okay, let's switch gears here. Let's talk some basketball. It's also been a little bit of a frustrating week as a KU fan. KU is 4-4 in their last 8 games, 19-6 overall in the season, 7-5 in conference play, 2-5 on the road. It's been about a week or so since we've last talked basketball, but definitely not the season that we've expected. Definitely not the win total we were hoping to see. The team looks sluggish and tired. Kevin McCullough's been dealing with injury. They looked absolutely awful getting boat raced against Texas Tech the other night, and that was bad from the start. Hunter looked like trash. KJ looked like trash. DeJuan was trash. Oddly enough, Nick Timberlake and Marco Jackson were your 2 best players, the guys that have struggled all year, and that might just be because they got extended minutes because of it. But there's a lot of stuff to get into with this team coming up against Oklahoma this weekend, which is another big-time road game against another top 25 caliber team in Oklahoma. KU's 1.5 games behind in conference play. I got to think that to this point of the season now, this is one of the biggest games on the schedule in the sense of if you lose this game, I'm pretty confident Big 12 race is over for KU's chances. Now, things could still happen. Houston still got a tough schedule. Texas Tech's got a tough schedule. Iowa State, all that, because this is a conference that just continues to beat up on itself night in and night out. But you got to get this win to feel somewhat comfortable even attempting to get back up there. So a lot to get into, JB. But where would you like to start? Let's start with this. What's your confidence level in this team right now on a scale of 1 to 10 as far as not just competing for a Big 12 championship, because that's always the expectation, but deep postseason play? Just where are you feeling? What are you feeling right now with how this team looks?
I'm very much struggling between 2 opposite ends of the spectrum of being in absolute panic mode and, just hitting the button that says this is not our year, versus, hey, we've got some potential, because I'm some of the wins that we've had so far this season, and I'm thinking, okay, come on. Like, we are still a top program. There's a reason we're still ranked number 6 right now. I mean, any team that's a top 10 team has a legitimate shot every single year to win the title. Has a legitimate shot every single year to win their conference championship as well. So really what I'm looking at with now is it's a battle of perspectives. And because the opposite side is, man, we suck on the road. I mean, and I've
Still
said
do.
we really do. You know, I said it weeks ago on the pod. I was like, this is the worst road Bill Self team that I have ever seen in my entire time as being a fan here. And I'm just I can't get away from it. I hate being right about it. I hate being right. I wish they would start winning. But this, you said it earlier, you know, it's everyone's sluggish. We all look off. We're not playing to our potential. Of course, we're struggling with illnesses, injuries. So there's the middle spectrum, I guess, is, well, hey, we're going to get better because once we get through injuries, once we get through illness, once we get our minds right and come off of this slump, we'll be okay. And I try to be the optimist, but I gotta tell you, as an honest KU fan, I am very scared. Scale of 1 to 10, I'm at like a 6 in terms of confidence that we can even win the Big 12 or make a deep run in the March Madness tournament. I wish it was a higher number, and it just sucks. But we've got time, I think, in the rest of our schedule to, bump up that confidence level. But if we're going to do that, we need to do it right now. Time is now.
You've been seeing a lot of comparisons to that 2018, 2019 team that coming into the year had good expectations. And then we saw very quickly just how that team, regardless of the pieces they had, excuse me, just didn't fit very well together. I still think this team's better on paper. But on the court right now, at least on away games, I mean, I think everyone could have sat here and expected the game against Texas Tech to go poorly without Kevin. I don't think you expect it to be that bad, a 29-point blowout. I was thinking somewhere, 10 to 12 range. But yeah, it kind of feels like an all-time low, at least with this team right now, because any time you go on the road, you just expect KU to shoot like crap, and you expect the other team to shoot 40% from three, hit 10 to 15 threes, have one guy go off like Darian Williams did this last game, going for 30, shooting a perfect 12 for 12 from the floor. You don't often see a KU team just get absolutely manhandled and pummeled like they did the other night. You think of that Kentucky game last year, very similar. But KU got out-rebounded. They look terrible. Their two best players were the guys that have struggled the most all season. Hunter looks terrible. He's got no hops. He can't get off the ground. He's still getting decent rebounds. But Hunter had his last 3 games, 2 for 12, 0 for 2 from 3, 7 of 19 from the floor, 1 for 3 from 3, 8 of 18 from the floor, and 0 for 2 from 3. And I'd say a good 70% of those misses are easy bunny layups right there around that he's just not getting in. So that's super alarming. DeJuan's 2 of 8 last game, 0 for 3 from 3, 5 of 12 the game before, 2 for 4 from 3, 5 of 10 the previous game, 1 for 3 from 3. So DeJuan, same thing. DeJuan's missing a lot of easy bunny layups. KJ, outside of this last game going 1 for 10, has still been doing just fine, other than the guy can't get a freaking rebound. He's averaging less than 4 rebounds a game of a guy with his athleticism skill set. Some of that's the way they play. Johnny Furphy's cleaning up the boards pretty well for a wing position. But your 3 starters go, I think, a combined 5 of 30. Combined 5 for 30 the other night against Texas Tech, who, give them credit, Texas Tech's a good team. They came out on fire. They came out fired up athletically. They were locked in defensively. They were the more aggressive team. We said this all year about the Chiefs, that every time you go up against another team, when you're this type of program, you get everyone's best shot night in and night out. And I know people want to give Hunter a lot of crap for his comments after the game of, that's just how it goes. When people play us, they just go off. That's just, that's just what it is. And everybody said that comment was pretty soft and an excuse because he played like crap himself. But he's also not wrong. Teams seem to somehow just go way above their expectations. Texas Tech was shooting like 30% from 3 heading into this game as a team, and they go 10 of 26. And just go off in the first half. I think they started 8 of 10. So they made 8 of their 10 3-pointers in the first half. Some of those unguarded, some of them guarded. Just rebounded the ball really well. Again, I don't want to dwell too much on that loss. I guess what I want to get into is, can this team recover? How long will it take? My thought is this team looks gassed. They look tired. Again, Hunter's got no hop right now. KJ, this last game looked the worst he's been all season for a guy that always has energy and a motor. Didn't have it. Dewan obviously rolling his ankle last week, kind of slowed him down. That all piled in with Kevin McCullough being hurt. Obviously not a good recipe for success. They've had basically a whole week off essentially this week to kind of recover and recoup. But to me, I got into it with a guy, a Jayhawk fan on Twitter the other day. Shout out Jayhawk Takeover. Didn't really get into it with him, but we went back and forth for a bit because I thought he had an outlandish take saying Hunter is so bad that he should come off the bench and KJ should start the 5. So got into that with him, but I just think this team looks tired. Their legs look exhausted. Unfortunately, and I would never doubt Bill Self because in Self we trust and he always has the answers. But one of his downsides we've talked about for years is his ability to play depth. Whether the depth is there or not, the talent level does not matter. He never plays depth. And even in this blowout game, his guys still played a ton of minutes. KJ still played 36 minutes. Hunter still logged 30 minutes. Furphy, 32 minutes. Juwan Harris on a bad ankle, 36 minutes. El Marco had the most minutes off the bench at 24. But even Parker Brown only got 6 minutes. And I know the bench was very, very, very thin. But even Parker Brown only logging 6 minutes in a game where Hunter couldn't do a dang thing on the court. So I do think Self needs to get a little bit of heat this week for how he's played this team, how he's coached them. He's even come on and said throughout the week that, he didn't have the guys prepared for that game. But when a game's already
about the techs? He's been getting so many technicals lately. It's insane. What is he doing?
I do think some of those are right. I mean, the Big 12, you've seen 4 coaches get thrown out in the last 2 weeks because of the lack of confidence in the ref crew to call a fair game, and Bill Self being the latest. And the funny thing is he wasn't trying to get a tech. Usually you can tell when Bill Self's trying to rile up his team by going out and getting the tech and getting tossed. This was not one of those. He's still, I mean, if you go back and watch that replay over and over, it doesn't look like he said anything nasty other than, he said the YOU word and in referring to the actual ref that he had issues with. But yeah, it's just wild. But yeah, I think Bill Self's coaching has struggled a little bit this year with how he's handled the play. Dewan and El Marco, to start the year, were a terrible combo on the floor. El Marco obviously was not prepared, but it's hard to also have an impact in the game if you only get 4, 5, 6, 10 minutes because you don't really have an impact. Timberlake, same thing, struggled. So I do think he needs to look at himself a little bit and just kind of wonder if he regrets not playing those guys longer minutes earlier in the season, because this team looks gassed. And if you're a tired team, that does not pose well for you down the stretch because the schedule doesn't get any easier. Thankfully, after this game against Oklahoma, they have a full week until the next game to give them some time to recover, which is probably fine. Maybe next week we're sitting here after a big win in Oklahoma going, okay, we're back. It's all good. But yeah, right now this just team, they look tired. They look worn out. The depth is concerning. Like I said, Timberlake and El Marco played relatively well. I'd say well for what their expectations are now versus where they were to start the season, but they're still making bonehead plays out there. So I'm concerned just because we don't play the bench enough. Obviously, Jamari McDowell was also out, so that doesn't help. But I think to me, that's why I look at how this game, and in his defense, Self didn't have a lot of options Tuesday night anyway, other than, I guess, Monday night, other than he could have played Parker probably 15 minutes instead of Hunter 35 or 30 minutes. It's been frustrating, but hopefully Kevin McCullough gets healthy because there's, again, big matchup this weekend in Oklahoma. That is I would consider a must win for Big 12 championship hopes. Would not be shocked though if we still drop it because we know how bad we play on the road, and Oklahoma's going to have a guy that just absolutely goes off, scorched earth, just like it has been every game we've played on the road this year. But just give me some of your thoughts heading into this weekend. What you want to see from the team at Oklahoma, assuming Kevin McCullough plays, which as of right now that's what it looks like. But assuming Kevin McCullough plays and everyone looks relatively healthy and energized, what are some of your expectations you want to see this weekend for you to feel comfortable again moving forward?
Yeah, the energy is going to be very important. I think we need to see a more methodical game from Kevin McCullough because, of course, he's been dealing with his knee injury, but even in the games leading up to it and in the midst of it, because he took a game off and then he played a game, and then we lost and he missed a game. But we've had in his recent games where he's been playing, he's just been awful. I mean, from an efficiency standpoint, he's been awful. He's not shooting at a high clip. Granted, he can still lead us, but you know what? Most of the time, a missed shot is basically a turnover. And I'm so tired of the missed shots by Kevin McCullough. So I just want him to be a little bit more strategic, have some new methodology to his game. You know, he's had some time to nurse his injury, but I would like to think that he's also had some time to watch film, to lock back in mentally, and to lead the team, because right now we are suffering without him. He is our guy, and we need him to do better. We need everybody to really do better. I think DeJuan will be fine. I think he just needs to get his ankle back to 100%. I think Hunter ultimately will be fine. He's not Hunter Dickinson right now. He's not playing like his true self. But he wouldn't be the nation's best transfer of all time if he wasn't the man. Like, and he can get back to that. So, man, I'm tired of these Saturday and then Monday turnarounds. Like,
Coach talked about it the other day too, that he's like, he even said, he's like, why do we call them Big Mondays? I mean, it's another game on the schedule. They're all big games. But he's not a big fan of the quick turnaround. He's hoping that's something that, you know, they can look at. All right, now your game's Friday night instead of Saturday, so it's Friday, Monday, or Saturday, Tuesday, because they could pick any night of the week. This is what the conference and the NCAA wants. It's not really our pick. Because they looked. I mean, this is what, two, I think, back-to-back weekends where we said Saturday they looked great at home, and then they go in to K-State, lose in overtime, a game that they probably should have won still, but a game where they had an 11-point lead in the second half and then blew it. And then same thing this week. You have the Saturday game. Now I'm going blank on who we played. Was it Oklahoma State? No. I don't know. We had the home game Saturday
against Baylor, and then
against Baylor. Looked good against Baylor for the most part. Won that game, and then you get blown out at Tech. So hopefully that's not this week in the same sense of you looked really good Saturday, because we don't have the short trip in between. But yeah, this team's got to get right. One thing I want to throw out to you, a stat here I got for you of just to add to the team playing successful against KU. Javion McCollum, Oklahoma's transfer, who's kind of been their guy for most of the year, their main scorer. I went about 7 games back. He's played relatively well, but he's also struggled a little bit, which means that tomorrow he's going to go scorched earth. He is 6 for his last 34 from 3. A guy that shoots on average about 5 to 6 threes a game. He's 6 for 34 in his last 7 games. And I could go further back. It was 10 of 53 or something that not great for a guy that has high volume shooting. So sign me up for 4 of 7 or 5 of 8 tomorrow with McCollum. It's just going to happen. He's the guy to look out for. But yeah, they talked about his press conference yesterday that all week the focus has been on the defensive side of the ball, getting out to the perimeter, boxing out, rebounding, and just bringing the intensity there. So definitely hope we see that, because this has been one of KU's probably worst team defensive years. I think they've got 3 individual guys that are solid on-ball defenders. You know, obviously DeJuan and Kevin could compete for Big 12 Player of the Year, National Defensive Player of the Year, and be all defensive first team. Kevin. KJ is a very productive defender for the most part, one-on-one. Hunter has been terrible. He's slow. His feet are terrible. He's not, for 7'2", he's not a shot blocker. He's not a rim protector. Obviously, we know what we've gotten out of the 2 spot between Timberlake, Elmarco, and Furphy's been okay, but he's still learning to play the game defensively. He's probably been one of the only other bright spots, I guess, the last couple of weeks.
He's just not good one-on-one.
He's slowed down, yeah. So this team, as a team, defending team, they're terrible on the ball screens, the switch. Guys are getting open, the help defenses late, that kind of stuff. So hopefully that corrects itself this weekend because Oklahoma's going to shoot a lot of threes. Porter Moser's going to have their team fired up, ready to give KU another punch because they're a team that's desperate too. I was looking at Oklahoma's schedule. They just came off of a big-time loss at Baylor a couple days ago, so they're looking to bounce back from that after a close win over Oklahoma State, which they shouldn't have been a close win because Oklahoma State's terrible. So this is a defining game for Oklahoma too, which means they'll be fired up, ready to go. And we got to go in and just kind of do our part. For me, a couple things I'm looking for. I'm looking for Hunter to be physical. He's got to play. I mean, he's 7'2". He's the biggest guy on the court. He's got to bring that size, athleticism. I guess I don't really say athleticism. He's got to bring his size and height and get in there and battle. He's done fine on the boards. I think he needs to just put a little bit more energy on the defensive end, but he's got to have strong hands. He's played a little bit soft lately, having a hard time catching the balls down low. Guys that are double teaming him, they're having to throw over top, and he's just getting a lot of batted balls up in the air. So I think he's got to play really good this weekend. He's got to look focused. He's got to be aggressive, look to get his shot, not force things, but look to get his shot. I think DeJuan needs to control the tempo like he can and not force things again. You know, the worst he's played this year is when he's really trying to force things in. And he's got to hit those bunnies. He's got to hit those mid-range layups. KJ, I'm not too worried about. I think having almost a week off will be fine. But yeah, Kevin's got to get in there. And I think you said it earlier, Kevin's got to just be more focused in his play style. I think a couple games this year, he's kind of looked like the NBA guy of, what the heck, man, why am I not getting these calls? And he should be more focused on playing under control, continuing to do what he does well, defend well, find open looks. We still don't have that guy to take over a game. We don't have that guy who, with 5-6 minutes to go, is just going to say, all right, boys, get on my back. Let's go win it. That's concerning, especially as we get into March Madness play. Kevin's probably that guy. Probably needs to be that guy. And he just hasn't been the most efficient the last couple of weeks. But maybe a lot of that's due to the injury. Hopefully that's the case, and he bounces back. But, yeah, any other thoughts on this team or this game before we get out of here?
Well, I just got to reiterate, this is a must-win. You know, I look back at the conference in so many recent years. The Big 12 conference has always been the best conference in college basketball for good reason, because half of our teams are always ranked. But what's funny about that is I look back and there's within those years, especially recently, honestly within the last decade, we've been the best conference in college basketball, and yet KU, despite having multiple ranked opponents on their schedule, KU still dominates the league, still had that wild 14-year streak of winning the league. And this year, we're saying the same things that we've always said. Oh, the Big 12 is the best conference in college basketball. Everyone's really good. Everyone's going to beat up on each other. This year, it's legit. This year, everyone has caught up to us. I really hate to admit it, but Kansas, we are falling flat. They're catching up. It's much more even. This is a must-win this weekend. And honestly, it's a must-win for the rest of the Big 12 play if we want to even have a shot at the title. I know now that we've got the championship from 2022, a lot of us really don't care about winning the Big 12 anymore. But it's a pride thing for me.
I think it's still, yeah, I still have pride there too. You want to be the best in your conference all the time. And exactly. I think this is now, obviously, I didn't want to get into it, but the loss of Arterio Morris from a roster standpoint sucked. That was awful because you could just tell how we would fit in perfectly with this group. So I just think the combination of how the roster was put together, if we went back to preseason, we felt pretty good. Nick Timberlake, a capable shooter, athletic guy. El Marco, a McDonald's All-American, athletic, can score. Fantastic. Johnny Furphy, he's going to get a few weeks to get going. Hunter, KJ are going to be solid. Parker Brown, good off the bench. It just hasn't worked the last few weeks. But again, I'm trying to attest most of that to tired legs, which some of that is on the players. I was talking to a guy the other day. I was like, these are 20-year-old kids that have the best athletic program in college athletics, teaching them how to take care of their body, eat right, working out, supplements, all that stuff. I'm like, they shouldn't be this tired. You'll play 4 AAU games in a day, and 8 games over the course of 4 days. These guys can handle it. But you can definitely see that the wear and tear is catching up. And again, I put some of that on coach for not extending the minutes on the bench long enough, especially in blowout games. There's a game a couple weeks ago where we were still up big and the starters were still in with like 6 minutes left. And I say it every year, if you don't play your bench early, then they're never going to show up for you late. We saw it with MJ Rice this last year. MJ didn't really get any look early, and by the time they went to him later in the year, he wasn't really up to standard. I think that's kind of been a theme the last 10 years is if the bench doesn't get run early in the season, then when you need the bench the most late, you can't count on them. Oh, and JB's been bouncing back before we got there. Okay. But yeah, let's wrap up there. Big time game this weekend against Oklahoma. I'm hoping we'll probably talk sometime early next week after, because then we have a big final 5-game stretch of the season at home against Texas next Saturday, and then Tuesday against BYU, another top 25 team. Then on the road at number 12 Baylor, which is a huge game, at home against K-State, and then that big one there at the very end on the road down in Houston. So monster 6-game stretch coming up that's still left here on the schedule. It's not going to get any easier. Might be the hardest 6-game stretch in all of college basketball, if you ask me, potentially. And the Caves already dropped the ones that they shouldn't. So they got to go out. If they go 6-0, you're feeling real confident. If they go 6-0 down the stretch, you're feeling real confident going into March Madness. But I think they just need to get back to playing what they were like earlier in the season, get the guys healthy, fresh legs, work on the ball, on the defensive side of the ball, focus in and dial up here for the final couple week stretch, and we're good. I guess one thing I didn't talk about in this, maybe we'll talk about next week in more detail, but I think the best thing that could happen to this team going into March Madness is to be a 3 seed. I'll leave it there. I'll dive into that more next week. But being a 3 seed might give them the best chance of having a deep run. But we'll get into that next week. But yeah, that'll do it for this episode. Again, thank you guys so much. Those have been following along. We just surpassed 50,000 50,000 YouTube views. That's fantastic. We're getting close to 400 subscribers. Would love to get to 500 by the end of March Madness. So we've got a lot of stuff going on. So if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button right there on the screen if you're watching here on YouTube. If you're listening to us over on Spotify during your commute, thank you so much for listening to us that way. You can always like and follow the podcast there. Share it with a couple friends. Get them on board with us. There's tons of Chiefs, Royals, KU football, KU basketball content. KU baseball season is underway as of today. Still have a fun episode out there with Coach Dan Fitzgerald. If you haven't checked it out, go do that. If you want to relive the joys of the Super Bowl victory, you can go back and watch our episode from a couple days ago, where we celebrate the Super Bowl and go back and kind of reflect on the game itself. CJ and Chris, even though football season will be wrapping up, they'll still be doing plenty of content with us. We're going to have a ton of off-season talk with free agency, contracts, draft, all that kind of stuff. So plenty more to come. Make sure you're checking us out everywhere: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at KCSA Pod. And of course, right here on YouTube, if you're watching, hit that subscribe button and share it with a few friends. Until then, guys, rock chalk, and we'll see you next time.